if the crime had not been committed in the first place. So that is our value, our fundamental principle. What, what would the situation be like today if those crimes had not been committed in the first place? That guides us. And because that guides us, we, over the past week in the Caribbean, the Caribbean Reparations Commission, we began with the fundamental notion of the developmental paradigm that if those times have not been completed, our people today, in terms of our health profile, in terms of our educational profile, in terms of economic development, or level of technology, so will be far different. And that was the basis of original 10-point plan. But over the years, we have evolved our concepts. And with the understanding that it's about creating a situation that would have existed if the crime had not increased in the first place, we recognize that decolonization, nationhood, has to be one of the pillars of our reparations movement. We are conscious that the Caribbean region is still the most colonized region in the world, full of European colonies, British colonies, Dutch, French, American colonies. And bear in mind, we were very clear when we did our research. Our reparations campaign, based on the crimes of native genocide, Africa, and slavery, the campaign is against the United Kingdom, Spain, Portugal, France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and Germany. We have identified 10 European countries. Some of those countries still have colonies in the Caribbean. And we say that before that transatlantic slave trade or trade in enslaved Africans, our people lived on the African continent in their own nations. They had their own nations. They had national dignity and national sovereignty. How can it be that after hundreds of years of exploitation, plantations, you tell our brothers and sisters in British Virgin Islands or St. Martin or Martinique, Guadeloupe, that your fate is to continue to be the subject of a European person. So our reparations campaign takes in that notion of decolonization. Secondly, as I said, the Carry Content Plan. And the Carry Content Plan is directed specifically at the national governments of Europe. Because the national government is the institutional link between the present and the past. And it is a national government that has the kind of resources that the 10-point plan requires. But along the way, we have said, even though the national government is the primary target, there are other subsidiary targets. Companies, insurance companies, banks, universities, families, that all were implicated and profited from enslavement or native genocide. So we have extended the campaign to them as well. Earl mentioned some of the families that have actually acknowledged that they were implicated and have made efforts. Fourthly, we have come to recognize that the international order that we live in today, the international institutions, the economic and political institutions, came out of and have their roots in those centuries of enslavement colonization. And that our newly independent nations in the 1960s and 70s were inserted into this international order in a still structurally unjust and exploitative manner. Yes, not as bad as the old days of colonialism, but still subject to inequities and exploitation. And so our reparations campaign now envisages, takes on board an effort aimed at the reparative restructuring of that international order, of the fundamental institutions of that international order. And part of that effort takes on board our demand for climate justice, because we recognize that that European industrial revolution that created the industries that generated greenhouse gases, that is causing the climate change that is affecting us principally today, that the beginnings of that industrial culture was based on the exploitation of people, the primitive capital accumulation that Europe benefited from based on those slave plantations and places like slaves. And the other first British colony, they colonized the land here in 1624, 23, and then they came back and set up the colony in 24. And that was the beginnings of Britain's industrial revolution. There were no factories, there was no industrial infrastructure in Britain in the mid-17th century. It started with that plantation system in places like St. Kitts and Barbados and Jamaica and so forth. So climate justice, yes. You exploited us to get the capital to build the industry. Those industries have created the greenhouse gases. And now we are once again on the front line. So we demand compensation for that. Then there is the internal aspect of reparations. It's equally as important. Yes, a big part of the campaign is that outward demand level. These European governments and institutions of the international order, but there's another that says we need to look at it. We need to look at it because we are people who have gone through centuries of trauma. And every people, there's nobody who goes through trauma and we're not marked by that trauma. We are really American people. We have survived what other people have not been able to survive, but realistically, people will be marked by that. And so part of our campaign is to look within ourselves, culturally, psychologically, and if we find anything within our society or within our national culture that in any way sparks of notions of white supremacy and black superiority, to identify it and to remove it and to go through that process, psychological healing. And attached to that is this campaign that we stage to deconstruct the myth of white civilization, Western civilization, and any notion of white superiority. Just listen to the speech of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Munich a couple of weeks ago, a whole extolling of so-called Western civilization and a whitewashing of the crimes that it committed. And so it's our duty to ourselves, to the world. We have to be the ones that call out this notion. No, that civilization is based on crimes. It was based on the enslavement. It was based on genocide. And they must be honest enough to recognize that the world cannot continue with those notions in. We must not relate with this. We must not relate with this. And so the reparations campaign is really the critical anti-imperialist, the critical human rights, the critical developmentalist, the critical survivalist campaign of the 21st century. So Gregory was right when he said back then that the 21st century has to be the century of reparative justice. And we are pursuing it, we are pursuing this campaign, we are pursuing a diplomatic strategy. Our brother speaks about the Ghana African Union resolution taken to the United Nations. Yes, we now have to intensify international diplomacy. United Nations, the Commonwealth will be having this kind of government conference here in the Caribbean and Antigua in November. We are gearing up for preparations on the agenda. Next month, we are meeting in the UK CARICOM Foreign Ministers Forum in London. We are gearing up on that agenda. We must pursue legal strategies, whether at the International Court of Justice, whether we pursue strategies in the various treaty bodies of the United Nations system, Rights Council, the Convention for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We must also pursue public education and the cultivation of international public opinion. And so it is a multifaceted strategy. I'm going to end here. But brothers and sisters, we of this Caribbean community should be very proud of ourselves. We started something in 2013 that has really blossomed. It has inspired reparations activists all over the world. And we give credit to our African brothers and sisters because you actually started before us in the 1990s with the Abuja Proclamation, the OAU's group of eminent persons on reparations, and we learned a lot from that organization, African Union effort in the 1990s. However, by the turn of the century, the OAU was in front, the new African Union was put in place, and they did not replicate those reparation structures in the new African Union. So it tells the Caribbean to pick up, to take the baton and start to run with it. And this we have done well. Welcome now, this new partnership we have between and all I can say is victory is certain. We will not be turned back, we will march on.
Thank you, Ambassador Islam, and I agree with you. We need to continue on. The struggle continues, but victory is certain. Please help me welcome Cabinet Secretary with the Government of States, Dr. Marcus Matter, to say a few words, and then we will go to Professor Don Marshall, who is joining us online.
Thank you very much. And then I'll speak with the person on behalf of the parents and the media and the whole national reparations. It wasn't easy. But this morning, I have two brothers, one in preschool, one grade 5. This morning was Monday's not today, where we're all close. But because it's history and heritage month, they were at Soviet Africa and for Caribbean. And that's lovely, that's it. But what's the education that comes behind it? I'll tell you where it is. When I was into like, I think it's how it was taught and content. We didn't learn about everything, all the capitals and purposes of the and some of the global ones. But I didn't know what was the capital in China. And so on, So I want to encourage people to focus on education in here and online. We're preaching to the choir. It's the little ones. For mine, the little ones, I try to instill hope in their knowledge and education, so that those young ones can come up and do what they're doing. But hopefully, like I said, they don't have to be saying the same you're saying. So I want to encourage them my son and sister to guys have a message here as we go along. And then
Thank you so much, Dr. Professor Director of the Institute of Social and he will be making a presentation. He will be giving a data-driven policy briefing on reparations. So we'll bring in Professor Marshall online as the person who's closing the session.
Greetings. I do take it that I can be heard. Greetings all.
Can you
I
speak
assume that I
again?
can be. Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank you and particularly thank the St. Kitts National Reparations Committee for inviting me to participate in this very important side event and indeed summit of sorts. I also would like to commend the viewpoints expressed by the ambassador for representing Ghana, and I would also like to commend the remarks also made by the ambassador to CARICOM. I do hope that this is transmitted clearly because I'm doing so via my mobile phone. One of the challenges of the reparations endeavor and a movement has been outlined by several challenges that we face have been quite adequately outlined and discussed by previous speakers. So I would not delve too far into that, except to say that the exciting aspect of it relates to the work that the Center for Reparations Research and the Arthur Lewis Institute will have done over the last 2 years to bring some empirics and some research into exploring what should repair and renewal look like from the vantage point of the Caribbean region. As you know, CARICOM comprises 15 member states, and we, with the support of a philanthropic organization known as Team Repair Limited, being joined in a research effort to precisely explore the question. And I say we here, I refer to the Center for Reparations Research and the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute, both entities within the University of the West Indies, to explore what would transformation look like based on principles associated with repair and renewal. Repair referring to the reparations justice demand. Why the three entities were joined at the hip. I refer to Team Repair Limited, Center for Research Reparations and South Lewis Institute, because we all shared in the visioning expressed by the work of the CARICOM Reparations Commission captured best in the 10-point plan. And we also shared in the understanding that the 21st century also was about overturning coloniality. Indeed, we recognize that the reparations endeavor thematically dovetails with the um, notion of seeking to overcome coloniality in all its guises. And so while others were working on the battle report and other researchers were working on identifying the historical wrongs and capturing that history adequately and thickly, we were missioned to explore what is it that Caribbean people across civil society and its leaders would wish to get out of uh, in order to, well, what they would wish to see transformation look like and the kinds of interventions that they would wish to see in the direction of repair. We recognize that chattel slavery, native genocide, and extractive forms of capitalism, particularly the colonial model, um, wrought dangers and havoc to infrastructure, to people, and to the environment. And so we set about the task of conducting interviews with key government officials, scholars, media personnel, and personnel from across civil society. Apart from the interviews, we also had focus group discussions, and we featured in those focus groups griots, musicians, artists, people from all walks, in order to capture across these 15 countries a sense of what it is that people imagine to be the ideal kinds of interventions required to bring about transformation, indeed, repair and renewal of their societies and economies. And by way of a snapshot, by way of a flavoring of the common recommendations, I can share with you that things like education and human capacity development came up. So within that theme, notions of psychosocial repair came up, the need for comprehensive teacher training programs, revolutionary curriculum, um, digital transformation, improving, and then of course, strengthen the health ecosystem also came up. Uh, the need to develop teaching hospitals, improve access to healthcare, uh, also the need to address the science, technology, digital divide. Of course, issues to do with debt cancellation, the need to link tourism policy with environment justice. These issues also came up as well across the 15 territories. Memorialization and preserving arts and heritage, uh, building museums. These came up in the area of agriculture, the pursuit of food sovereignty, and infrastructure to so support that also came up. Greater investments in fisheries and agro-processing plants. Ladies and gentlemen, what you had coming out of what people and their governments wanted throughout the region was an address of development needs and emergencies, but within a context of it being in the direction of repair and renewal. So, in essence, there is, as the Ghanaian representative spoke, there was a community dimension to the reparations imaginary. There's a national dimension to the reparations imaginary, and indeed, when discussions turned to forms of reparations, it was quite clear that for many, the calculus of possible interventions were is plentiful. So while reparations as a goal, as a program, can take legal forms, can take the question of compensation and so on, there was also a view that this must dovetail with a political economy understanding of development. And development in the sense of having a set of interventions paid for and supported as part of a reparatory justice framework, and not necessarily as any loan or any grant in the sense of a donation, but really an investment in sustainable futures. And so it's in that sense that we got a overwhelming consensus, whether we were in Belize or whether the research was done in Haiti, wherever we went in St. Vincent de Grenada and Grenada, St. Vincent de Grenadines, St. Kitts, Nevis, Barbados, the consensus emerging was that there must be a way in which we treat to reparatory justice as development as justice. So development should be seen as one where social justice is being promoted while building out sustainable futures and sustainable economies and livelihoods. So one of the reasons why we have come to this research and come to a shared understanding of this struggle is because of the ways in which it marries so well the agenda of development, broadly understood and understood as for this particular region rooted in justice. Indeed, for global Africa, there are lessons that we can share in this research endeavor. If you pursue research along the lines of renewal and repair, what you would find is that the project interventions suggested and raised by the people, by their governments, tend in the direction of addressing historical wrongs, tend in the direction of destroying the damage wrought upon our societies and our environments by colonial extraction and by the effects of colonial extraction. And that is something that we should never underestimate. And a word to one of the things that I think I have to report on behalf of the many researchers who participated in this exercise. There are about 20 of us that were involved in this exercise. And while they played a role in coordinating this, I really want to pay tribute to all of them and to the funders, Team Repair Limited, for every turn supporting the research effort. And one key lesson coming out of this, especially in our engagement with the moral question about repair. Nothing destroys your future faster than being loyal to the wrong past. And that is a message that we need to convey to our sisters and brothers in Europe who, though were not responsible for the historical wrongs, they came to be unwitting beneficiaries of them. And when we engage in the discussion of this reparatory justice and climate justice, we must always remind them that, it is morally wrong, morally incorrect to remain loyal to a wrong past. And the past has to be corrected. Those historical wrongs have to be corrected. So the best way we can do so is to continue to make good our claim for reparatory justice, but root this also in an understanding of what exactly do these societies and economies need based on solid research. And I think I shall yield at this point after sharing these insights with you.
Thank you very much, Professor Marshall. We absolutely appreciated that presentation. And I hope you will stay with us in case members of the audience here have any questions. Now we will shift gears a little bit and we will invite Ms. Carla Astavan, who is the chair of the St. Kitts Nevis National Reparations Committee, to take a seat, as well as Dr. David Martin. Edward, oh, I'm so sorry. Edward Martin to take a seat as well. Mr. Martin is an international law scholar, and we will pose one specific question to the members here. Oh, okay.
Let's all move forward, please. Let's
So I hope the persons who are joining us by Zoom can still hear us clearly. You will give us some indication. And so the one question that I'm asking the persons here to respond to is, what concrete regional mechanism should member states and CARICOM advance within the next 24 months to operationalize reparatory justice? Again, what concrete regional mechanism should member states and CARICOM advance within the next 24 months to operationalize reparatory justice? And I'll begin with Chair of the State National Reparations Committee. I'm going to put her on the spot because we are in the Federation of State and this forum is hosted by the National Reparations Committee.
Thank you, Elsie. Wow. So I've gone over this quite a lot. Well, as chair of the reparations, the Secretary of National Reparations, I feel it is important that we definitely put things, put strategies in place immediately. So my thoughts for over the next 24 months has to be education of our public to raise grassroots awareness of reparations, the need for reparations. We have to push our governments to formalize a structure, a legal structure especially, to seek out our legal luminaries throughout the region to put that case forward, because we heard from Ambassador Commission, we heard from our Canadian ambassador and our delegation advocates that this part is very, very important. As I reflect on the Hillary Clinton written back then, one of the things we said is that Britain, all of these countries are relying on generations forgetting. And so I've changed my narrative from saying my children's lifetime or my children's children's lifetime to it being more immediate. Let it be now, because we don't want the next generation to have to deal with this. The onus is on us for it to get it done. So we have to create a timeline for reparations to be achieved within my lifetime. I'm hoping that I'll be there 24 months from now so that we can say, so in 6 months crunches, we can say, let's do this, let's do that, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Carla. One of the things that I want to emphasize what you said last year, it must be done now, because when I got into reparations movement 12 years ago, these are things that we discussed, and I know that I'm still young. I'm 33 now, but I really don't want to turn 60 and be moderating this same conversation at that age. And I think that we have to take decisive action that encourages young people like me and younger to come into the movement when they see that new structure is being moved, when they see that systems are in fact changing. So, oh, Mr. Busquets, please, please come and move forward. I was like, I don't think he was there all the time. Mr. Arnold is the chairperson of the National Reparations Committee in St. Lucia. So we do want to be a part of this conversation as well. And so I will ask King Kwesi that Therefore, to also respond to this question, no need to reiterate anything that is said, but from your perspective, what is necessary?
We pray that God plants purpose in our hearts. But once He plants the purpose, it is our own abilities that will determine whether we achieve the purpose or not. So we all must have clarity about what we think is necessary. And whilst different people from different places may determine that some things are of greater priority than others, in the first 24 months, I see with clarity the coming together at a certain intersection of our historians, academia, our documentarists, and our orators to put out material purposefully and intentionally about what led to reparations, the need for reparations, and a world where reparations will bring us all unity, harmony, and prosperity. It is important for us to let even the perpetrator of justice recognize that certain actions will make it safer for their children to also do. You see, it's important for us to recognize that we're not just fighting to take something away from something. We're fighting for somebody to understand and for the whole world around them to understand that the injustice they did cannot be hidden. And that is why the media is so important. Everybody who knows how to use a camera, be it a still camera or a moving camera, everybody who's given the tongue to speak. For all of us may speak, but not all of us are speakers. And everybody who has the ability to research and write history, and everybody who has the ability to be a pedagogist, to be a teacher, to impart knowledge to others, must form units in every nation that wishes to see reparations happen. We have a book line here right now, which is written by a white person who is in support of reparations. So if that person can do this, it's either Hakeem can do that. My big question is, what are our professors in the universities doing? And if they have a voice for conversations in the classrooms, where are the platforms on which they are speaking for more people to hear them? Because if we have the historians first, the researchers in academia next, our orators and linguists next, and our documentarists and media people form units to put out narratives for the whole world to see the need for reparations, the conversation will become global. Little children will talk about, oh, for these injustices, these must be done. Or in the same way as every one of us has told our children that if you push your friend and his lollipop falls, the least you can say is sorry. They can start having conversations with their parents at home and saying, Dad, did our great grandparents actually do this? And what are we doing to restore them? And what are we doing to repair them? So for me, the legal stuff will follow, but we have not sufficiently put out narratives. Without the narratives, there will be no conviction. And without conviction, there will be no conscious action. Thank you.
This is one thing that we have been making when we think about institutions, about reparations, about repairing cultural identity, repairing the things that our children are taught. And one of the things that we spoke about, Tyler and I, are the nursery rhymes that we teach the children. You know that nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, falling down. Many have not seen London Bridge, many do not know where London Bridge is, and it's being embedded into your consciousness from a very young age, these European ideals. And so there's a book by Stephen Golding out of Jamaica, and he said, let us repair this nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, by saying, Timbuktu is going up, going up, going up. Timbuktu is going up. Man, Fill it up with stolen books, stolen books, stolen books. Fill it up with stolen books. And in this way, you begin to prepare the identity of the children as they come up. And you also begin to teach them about reparatory justice at that young age. So,
There is a nursery rhyme that we all learned as children, which angers me today because my job since I was 19 years old was a broadcaster and then managing advertising promotions and building brands in Ghana and around the world teaches me that whoever controls the narratives controls the thinking of the people. Do you remember Baba Black Sheep Have You Any Wool?
yeah,
Do you know how annoying that rhyme is? Baba Black Sheep Have You Any Wool? Yes, sir, master, 3 bags full. One for the master, one for the maid, and one for the little boy who lives down the lane. What about one who actually looks after the sheep? So we have these narratives that have been subliminally planted into our minds, and we have also proudly taught our children without knowing how silly we have been over the years. So the narrative, because once the narrative is accepted culturally, intellectually, and internationally, then the legal systems, which my brother is very great at activating, can follow. So these first 2 years, maybe the first 1 year, if you say you are a poet, and if you're of African origin, what poetry, what words are you stringing together like African beads on the neck of a woman, so that people will hear and be conscientized about the need for reparations?
thank you. Now we will have Earl State. Mr. Earl State is the so we go to the district state and come back to answer the question that we have asked. What concrete regional mechanism should member states and CARICOM advance in the next 24 months to operationalize reparatory justice? So we heard from the chair of the State Business National Reparations Committee. We heard from one of our Ghanaian envoys. Now we would like to hear from Mr. K of the State National Reparations Committee, and then we will call other two speakers to also answer that question.
Thank you. There is certainly quite a lot that we should do within the next 12 months. And among the list of things, or priority number 1 has to be strengthening the link between our national reparations committees and the population. The people who we are seeking reparations for have to understand why we are asking them to do what we would like them to do with us, and not just us doing for them. When we were established 12 years ago, our very first public activity was to take the reparations message to every one of our 21 secondary schools. We went to the Ministry of Education and got the permission to take lectures to the schools. So our members went to all of the 21 schools. Immediately after that, we launched a national and a regional reparations broadcast system. We're bilingual, and we have to seek reparations not only from Britain but also for France, because we like saying we were 7 times British, 7 times French, and they fought 14 wars over us. But keep reminding them that we are all the time 14 times a colony, just seeking to change flags. And therefore, we are bilingual. We speak the same basic Creole as in Dominica and Haiti and the former French Caribbean, also in various parts of the Pacific and Africa. And what we have done is, at the national level, we've done bilingual broadcasts. to the national level, which is also carried on the state radio and also by the stations that wish to do so. We also had a very important link which we would encourage others to also develop, and that is with the UE TV based in Barbados, UE TV Global. They work with us to take our lectures from home to the world, to the Caribbean and the world. Our national lectures go to people who understand the two languages. However, the bigger one is what we call the regional history and reparations lectures. And that is carried out with the cooperation of the CRC, as well as the unit in Jamaica, the Center for Reparations Research. And what we did was on the last Thursday of every month, we would have a broadcast on reparations and history, because in some of the territories, believe it or not, we had opposition to broadcasting about reparations. So we had to place reparations within the historical context. And if that surprises you, what will further hurt you was that at the University of the West Indies, there was a move to remove history from the curriculum. And Sir Hilary Beckers and others had to fight and to use means other than majority vote to ensure that history remained on the agenda. And we heard from the PS, the Cabinet Secretary of St. Kitts earlier. He admitted that while he was at school, he never liked history. I never liked geography because I knew more about how to draw the map of Ireland than I knew how to draw the map of Dominica next door. We talk about the need for us to be able to take that message to the schools, because they are the future. And the two responses that we have got in our public and school outings are very important to note. When we go to the communities where we can associate that community with a history of struggle for reparations, at the end of the discussion, the first question from the older persons in the community is, when are we going to get that money? Will we get it while we are alive? But when we go to the schools, the response is totally different. How come we never learned this? Why isn't this in our books? Send us the link. We need to learn more about that. And what we discovered at the schools also was that it was not only the students, but the teachers were also learning. And therefore, we were taking the reparations message at the school to the students and the teachers. And coming out of that, we've developed a national body of history lecturers. And I think this is what King was earlier responding to, the need for us to be able to write our story, to be able to contribute to our narrative, to be able to ensure that what our students will be learning tomorrow is not the story, not our story as the hunted, written by the hunter. We have to rewrite our story from the standpoint of the hunted. And that is very important. So in as much as we might be able to draw on history, historical research, etc., on what has been written about us, we are now in a position to do what we have to write, not his story, but our story. And point for now is that we also, now that we have, as David pointed out, the OAU started off the call for reparations, and we, the Rastafari movement in the Caribbean, started the call for repatriation. And the Rastafari movement is well represented on our national committee, including the Caribbean Rastafari Organization. And we have to acknowledge that when we talk about repair, the need for repair, we have to address the Rastafari movement, the tribulations they faced, trying to bring Africa home, and the consequences for many of them. Some got killed. In the case of St. Lucia, I was the editor for Calling Rastafari, a newspaper that we had established that came out fortnightly. And every fortnight we'd have to have on our front page the last Rastaman who got killed by a police officer. We also had a situation where whenever these police homicides took place, there would be a case, a preliminary case, a magistrate's case. And at that magistrate's case, which would determine whether the police officer should be prosecuted, the ruling was always called something called death by misadventure. So the victim caused his death. And therefore, with that ruling, there is no prosecution of the officer. On that basis, many Rastafari brethren lost their lives, including one who was detained and found hanging in his cell. But in none of those cases have we been able to have the sort of justice that we seek. So in as much as we have to follow our regional and international commitments, the struggle for repair at home has to be around local issues that people could relate to, so that in that sense, we will not be only speaking for them, but walking and talking with them. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. I absolutely agree.
Legal structure and legal communities where legal experts can discuss what the best way forward is to actually achieve reparations, because we cannot fumble that ball. There are multiple international courts that could be addressed. I've been to the International Court of Justice last year. I talked to a few judges, so the win there is strong because it's their international law. As the ambassador to Caricom from Barbados has said, it's their international law that enabled oppression. It's their international law that enabled the system in which we have comparatively little say for the people who we are. And therefore I say one approach has to be a legal approach where we set up structures in which legal experts can come together, discuss, and ensure that we have a obtainable legal path ahead of us. The second has to be a communications strategy, because we have justice on our side. The facts are so blatant. 2015, when England paid out the last slave owner for reparations. How can that be? No person with common sense can understand that. So there has to be a structured communications approach, because the legal headwind will be strong. And I'm going to tell you, all the things that the honorable elders have mentioned so far will fall in place because the legal and the communication strategy will serve as a driver. We will see what documents will be necessary. We will see what issues we will have to put forward. We can say, hey, please tell us a little more about the Rastafarians that got killed so we can look at it on a local level. Please, we have to educate our public in order for them to know, to be steadfast for the communications part of it. So therefore I say twofold approach. We have to have, because I know a lot of time, twofold approach. Implement a legal framework of experts who can advance the cause of reparation on the legal field. Implement a communication strategy within the region for persons to communicate, have a united message, because justice is on our side and the world should know. And those two poles will serve as drivers for everything else that we have discussed. Education, all of the other aspects. So I would like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk. And yes, I'll hand over to the moderator.
Thank you so much for your introductions. They are well taken, and I will ask Ambassador Theo Farah to round out this conversation.
Thank you very much. The time bound for the next, I believe, 24 months.
Yes.
Obviously, as I believe is being proposed here, and from my observation, different regions of the world will approach this differently, no matter what we here say. Different countries will approach this differently. Different international organizations may approach this differently, etc., because as I said, this is a very multidisciplinary subject. I think one of our slides, which I'm sure you may remember, discuss the fact that it is, as I said, it's multi-regional, multinational, generational, lingual, etc., etc. So with all those complexities, which few things can we say can be done in 24 months. I'm speaking as I should, as a representative of the Ghana government, a representative of the president of Ghana, who the African group has selected in 5 nations as their reparations champion. So I really don't speak for myself, but this, I think, is a question where I'm supposed to express my personal opinion. But my president is not here this week. What we have done at the Office of Global Reparations, simply because we have assumed and understood our mandate as global, is to have prepared a huge plate of documentation, which addresses some of the issues that we have just discussed. What are the archaeological and historical findings, for example, at the level of UNESCO, United Nations Educational and Scientific Organization, which is the United Nations Agency, which I was a member of by virtue of being a Minister of Communication and Minister of Education at different times in Ghana. So, UNESCO is based in Paris. We used to go there as ministers and have all kinds of discussions. And they have taken up this reparations agenda from cultural and heritage point of view, in terms of the artifacts that have been stolen and are lost, and are in museums and monuments, and fetching billions of dollars paid by different criminals or whatever they call themselves. So that's the aspect international. And I'm also concerned about how to network, especially the Southern American groups which are not English speaking, and therefore you can't communicate directly with them unless you are able to solve. The groups in Brazil, where there are more than the largest group of we know that, but I don't know what the relation between you in the Caribbean and the Brazilians who are Portuguese speaking. For example, mining. And then, of course, the Hispanics in Brazil, I mean, in Latin America, because from Brazil, almost all the other countries in Latin America we call them, are all Spanish-speaking countries, from Chile to Argentina to Bolivia to Venezuela to all the other places, Panama, etc., Mexico, all Spanish-speaking. And the Spanish-speaking people have now become one of the strongest and most populous groups in the United States. And so also in Congress, Madam Cortez from New York, etc. Now you have African, Middle Eastern as the mayor of New York, not the mayor of New York, Mandani. And we also have an Islamic person as the mayor of London. So there are all kinds of, demographic shiftings which are favoring the reparations agenda. So if you add African Americans to Hispanic Americans and to other people, minority groups, even the Asians and the Chinese, I'm sure that the largest population group now in the United States, and will be the largest because of population growth and number of children, etc. So all these are potential sources of strength for the reparations agenda, which we can't lose sight of. So we need to harness the strengths of the different elements of reparations, because there's a judicial angle, there's a legal angle, there's a financial, there's, so many angles. And that's what, respectfully, I believe my office, the Ghana presidency, which has been selected by all Africans to represent reparations, at least on behalf of Africa, therefore on behalf of the global community, are here to do. And we have a specific agenda where we are asking at least the Caribbean and Latin America, Latin American states, to support a specific resolution that's next month. So that's an immediate 1 month, not 24 month activities that must be, we hope, supported. And then following that, we have a lengthy agenda of activities that we hope to put in place, and which is reparations now, which we expect to produce out of Ghana, a television program, another communications agenda, including reparations, TV, radio, etc., which are all in the works, which must be funded by various parties, including the government itself, but other private sector actors and play roles. Because we know that when we get to the point where we shall also go to London and sit before the King of England, or before Lodge of London, Barclays Bank and this United States, the facts will be there. If you want to go there with facts, not just with emotion. These are the facts of your company. What you paid, what you did, this, that. What do you want us to do? How shall we address it? Very nice, pleasant, diplomatic conversation, but out of it, very clear-cut outcomes. This is what also the Herero tribes in Namibia have succeeded in doing with German government. The point where the German government has agreed to pay the Hereros who had a genocidal incident around 1904, 1906, where thousands of them died. And Germany says, we'll pay you 1.1 billion over a certain period of time. So that's what we can accept by one country. Another country is also watching that their time is coming. So we must be aware of the economic flows and ebbs and flows around the world, and especially the challenge that reparations may have in the United States. Because people assume the United States is naturally opposed to reparations. But I'm here to argue, and I will use the same United States, that Mr. Donald Trump is a champion of reparations. People say, how do you mean? No, in terms of reparations, yes. He's the largest claimant for reparations from his European police and from the global trading system. When he imposes tariffs on various countries, what is his argument on national television? You guys have cheated us. That's America's over our trading relationships. China, you cheated us, you cheated us, you cheated us. Pay 40% more, pay 100% more. It's not reparations.
It is.
So that is reparations in trade. That's another form of trade and industry in Ghana. So I can listen and hear reparations very clearly when it comes from different directions. So we can be a very big champion of reparations when it comes to trade. But they should look at the reparations also from this other level. And Rubio was here. I don't know what he said to our prime ministers, but you speak to them in a language they can understand. They will have a different approach. Finally, I just give you an example from my own personal experience at the World Bank, which we are now saying we want to reform the global financial architecture. Okay, fine. But I've been to the World Bank 3 years, and Africans and people of Africa and Caribbean people were intimidated, unable to stand up and rise up for their rights. In less than 6 months, I created what became known as African Staff Mission Working Group, went to the Staff Association of the World Bank, found a way to get a budget of $5,000 at the time, and organized Africans at the World Bank in 1997 and 1999 to 2000, to the point where, how do I give you the figures right? No, 1988 rather, to 1991. So we produced a study through the incredible support of the Turkish vice president of the World Bank at the time. And people have said that this feat has never been repeated at the World Bank, where an individual can go to the vice president of human resources and ask for the data, private data of all World Bank staff. All World Bank staff, in the days when data protection of people had been issued, they gave it to me. And that confidentiality. We produced a study proving that people from your region of the world, from African region, are appointed usually 2 to 3 years older than people from other regions of the world. They are given $5,000 less at the time of appointment than people from other regions of the world. It takes them 2 more years or more to get their next promotion than other regions of the world. And they are never assigned to countries outside of Brazil and Caribbean region or the African region as professionals of the World Bank who are engineers and doctors and medical science and agriculturists. It is that study, which was published in 1991, just at the time I was leaving to work at the African Development Bank, which opened up career opportunities for Africans to go to, posted to Manila, and to be posted to Poland and Hungary and all this. And there are high-level officers still working, such as Madam Ngozi Iweala, who is the Director General of the World Trade Organization, was at the World Bank at the time, who attempted to say why I'm etc. So we've had some reputational experiences in the past, which by God's grace we will be able to utilize at the right time in the question for all that we are discussing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. The time is far spent, but I wanted to ask if any member of the audience had a question or two that they'd like to ask. Yes, or make a comment. Okay, I see one. Is there any other? Okay, so 2. Okay, so we will wrap up after these 2 questions. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is I'm training law for 2 years. And first of all, I want to say thank you for the conversation. This is my second one in a few weeks, and each time I've come to one and learned something more. And I think it's really, I want to quickly endorse what Dr. Martin proposed for 24 months. Thank you, Elsie, for that, because I think it's very important if we're going to get to it in our lifetime that we give ourselves clear end dates. And I think those 2 suggestions are something that we can action beyond CARICOM or waiting for the heads, because we know how long implementation takes at that level. And I think documentation is important, not just to make the case, but also to keep our records. This is important. And I think the example and the illustration of that is that we are using a thesis from Sir Arthur Lewis that is 80 years old, because he recorded it, because Walter Rodney and all of the others have made the case. So I think documenting for legal purposes, as well as documenting so that we can share the information far and wide and also integrated in our schools, in the high schools with our children. The documentation is important. And I think those are two initiatives that at the national level we can action without waiting for our political heads to endorse it.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Stockery. I am the current Secretary General of so I'm currently the Secretary General for the National Commission of Civic for UNESCO. And I had a question before the people mind, Mr. Martin, who was here, just as a word of caution, proceed with our advocacy. As you would know, the Caribbean case for reparations is very distinct from an African American case. It's very distinct from a Latin American case. And even within the CARICOM approach, we see that we are also considering the experience from the enslaved and the African descendants of those enslaved with the indigenous genocide, and we also completed the indentured servitude of the Indians. And we have to be very careful because the more that muddy the water in terms of expanding and expanding, it sort of leads to ambition creep that can become very overwhelming. And in terms of getting swift results, swift attention to the core, what is at the core of this, we will, it can become, you know, a can that we just kick down the road and it's taking a lot longer than we would want it to take. So I would just like us to be very focused. In the Caribbean context is concerned, especially when taking this before the ICJ, which I do recommend. I am also the former ambassador and secretary to the United Nations, and I'm quite aware of how these resolutions on the table can go in terms of all member states having to weigh in on every word, every punctuation mark, and so on. And I am almost certain that when that informal process is concluded, that it will not resemble exactly what we would have preferred it to be. So I really envisage that the ICJ is where we would be able to get legal decisions to clear what transpired as the greatest feminist human ever experienced. In a similar fashion to what we would have seen in what occurred when the Palestinian case, we have what happened in Gaza, and it was found being declared as stratification on the countries. So that's my first comment on what this is. The second one is just from my perspective as the Secretary General of UNESCO, which is embedded in the Ministry of Education, just to give publicly the assurance that the Ministry of Education is moving seriously with the creation, the development of a curriculum on civics studies. As you know, we have our challenges for one, and they have been certainly in that regard, maybe not less to do with more money and more to do with human resources, because our maybe it died. It died. I hope they can still hear me. Yeah. Oh. We have that challenge. But just to give the assurance, even our people are not aware of our history in terms of the history of slavery and what that meant, and also to what came prior, because our genesis did not begin at the bottom of a slave ship. We were people with a proud past, a noble history of empire and kingdoms. We have Mansa Musa, as we mentioned, many stories, and our people are not aware of them. And without that knowledge and understanding and a sense of even an identity identifying our Caribbeanness in the context of our Africanness, even that in all of our outreach that we've been having. There are people who don't feel like we are taking the steps towards including the history of Africa itself. And for that, we are pleased that scholars. And it is on Africa Forum of its kind that brings all stakeholders with history and culture and heritage together to discuss and ideate around how we can educate our people, bring in lecturers, bring in academics, and so on. And so I'm just pleased that we have persons like Ms. L.V. Harry and Ms. Kala Astefan working with us. And I do pledge that under my leadership, we will continue to do more. Thank you.
This now brings us to the end of this forum. There have been some challenges, no doubt, but I'm a believer in the case that we can't wait until things are perfect to do something. We have to push forward even in the face of the challenges, just as our ancestors did, to ensure that we could be born free from chains. Now it is our responsibility to mentally emancipate ourselves and to build the infrastructure for reparations. So thank you very much to Mr. Earl Bousquet, from the chair of the National Reparations Committee in St. Lucia, for speaking both on behalf of his Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, who is a huge proponent of reparations, and participating on behalf of your National Reparations Committee as well.
Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you to Ambassador Theo Garbra. He is a special envoy from Ghana, as well as King Darkwa. Thank you very much for participating, as well as the chair of the National Reparations Committee here in St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Edward Martin. Sorry, I'm going through this because we've got Professor Don Marshall, who spoke online, Ambassador David Commission, and also our Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Marcus Natta, who made the time to come and also contribute. So thank you so much to all of our presenters today, and thank you to the members of the audience who took the time out of your busy working schedule, because you recognize that reparations is indeed everybody's business. There will be more interactions, there will be more work done, and we hope that you will also, we hope that you will also participate in that. And thank you very much to our online audience who have stayed with us throughout the technical difficulties, have stayed the course to participate at that level. So thank you very much, everyone. Please be safe.